everyone. Greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. I'm Steve Deace, and we are brought to you by our friends over at Farmer Bills. You know, a recent study showed that 90% of Americans are not hitting their daily protein threshold. And since protein is literally the building block of human life, it's kind of important. So you've got to be hitting those protein goals, but it can be tough. All right, you're on the go, you're working hard. Well, Farmer Bills has your back, and for a limited time, he's increasing the discount to 20% for you to boost your metabolism, stay full for longer, hit your protein goals with their air-dried beef biltong. You've seen the labels. All the other beef jerky companies lace their beef with lab chemicals, but Farmer Bill, he's a like-minded folk just like you in the listener land. So the beef is American. The ingredients, they're clean. His meat stacks are cured with sea salt, apple cider vinegar, herbs, and spices. They're very good, by the way. Grab yours today with this limited time offer, 20% off with the new code STEVE20. That's 20% off with the new code STEVE20. I recommend the bestseller bundle because it's got a 4-pack of their sliced biltong, including the original and the one that I liked, which was the spicy chili, a half-pound original slab, 2 of their grass-fed tallow bombs to keep your skin healthy and moisturized, and more. Order today with free shipping by using the code. The new code, STEVE20, at Farmer Bills Provisions, Bills and Provisions, plural, farmerbillsprovisions.com. That's code STEVE20 for free shipping and 20% off at farmerbillsprovisions.com. All right, coming up, it is back to a traditional Wednesday. We've got Buy, Sell, or Hold. The prophet of woe and lamentation, our good friend Daniel Horowitz, will come and kvetch with us here in the final segment of the program. But before we get to that, let's get started, as we always do, with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by a rollback and a step in the right direction. The FDA is set to limit COVID jab recommendations to only those who are 65 years old and older, and some higher-risk individuals under the age of 65. New leaders of the FDA and the agency's division that regulates vaccines published a commentary in the New England Journal of Medicine laying out their plan for future use of COVID jabs. FDA Commissioner Marty Makary and Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research Director Vinay Prasad argue that the United States recommendation for COVID jabs for everyone over the age of 6 months old is out of step with the rest of the world and likely no longer needed. At the National Institutes of Health, Director Dr. Jay Bhattacharya prompted a walkout from dozens of snowflakes for suggesting
it's possible. There's a lot of controversy over this. I'm sure there's folks in the room who disagree with me, but it's possible that the pandemic was caused by research conducted by human beings. And it's also possible that the NIH partly sponsored that research. And if that's true, it's nice to have free speech. Welcome, you guys.
In the Senate, HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. lampooned Senator Patty Murray.
Senator, I want to point out that in 2021, at the beginning of his administration, President Biden submitted his budget on May. You know what? You made an accusation of me, and I'm going to answer it.
Okay, I appreciate
On May
that.
28th, he submitted his budget. So our budget. We're a new administration.
Okay, you can go.
And I also want to point out.
I have just 2 minutes left. I asked you a specific
I want to
question.
point out something, Senator. You presided here, I think, for 32 years. You presided over the destruction of the health of the American people.
Well,
Our people are now the sickest people in the world.
Seriously.
Because you have not done your job.
Seriously. That is an
What have you done about it? What have you done about the epidemic of chronic disease?
Mr. Secretary,
what have you done about the epidemic of chronic disease?
Seriously.
U.S. Department of Justice has opened a criminal investigation into former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo for allegedly lying to Congress about his decisions that he made as governor during the COVID-19 pandemic. At issue is Cuomo's truthfulness regarding his role in the writing and review of a state health department report from June of 2020 that underestimated the nursing home death count by nearly half. You'll remember Senator Tim Kaine. He was Hillary's running mate back in 2016. And yesterday, he attempted to grill Secretary of State Marco Rubio on the issue of accepting Afrikaner refugees from South Africa.
But I'm going to ask you, so a well-justified fear of persecution?
Yeah, they thought that their farms were being burned down and they would be killed. I think that's a pretty good justification for wanting to come. They're afraid for their lives.
And should it be applied in an even-handed way? That's an easy.
No, our foreign policy doesn't require even-handedness. It requires prioritizing the interests of the United States.
The statutory phrase says you are entitled to entrance as a refugee if you demonstrate a well-justified fear of persecution.
No, you're not entitled.
So
you're
can
allowed.
you have a different standard based upon the color of somebody's skin? Would that be acceptable?
Well, I'm not the one arguing that. Apparently you are, because you don't like the fact that they're white, and that's why they're coming.
I'm just asking you to say that would be unacceptable.
Well, no,
that
I would say that the United States...
a very easy thing to say.
The United States has a right to pick and choose who they allow into the United States.
Even based on the color of somebody's skin.
No one's saying. You're the one that's talking about the color of their skin, not me. These are people whose farms were being burned down and they were killed because of the color of their skin.
CNN's Joseph Goebbels joined Megyn Kelly, and the latter absolutely bludgeoned he and his network, deservedly so, over their blind eye regarding Biden's cognitive decline, to which Goebbels responded,
Alex and I are here to say that conservative media was right and conservative media was correct, and that there should be a lot of soul searching, not just among me, but among the legacy media to begin with, all of us.
Learning Chinese today, today's phrase is, so that means you're resigning in disgrace, right?
那么这意味着你是耻辱的辞职，对吗？
And then there's this from President Trump on Truth Social yesterday, quote, Joe Biden was not for open borders. He never talked about open borders where criminals of all kinds, shapes, and sizes can flow into our country at will. It wasn't his idea to open the border and almost destroy our country and cost us hundreds of billions of dollars to get criminals out of our country and go through the process we're going through now. It was the people that knew he was cognitively impaired and that took over the auto pen. They stole the presidency of the United States and put us in great danger. This is treason at the highest level. They did it to destroy our country. The Joe Biden that everybody knew would never allow drug dealers, gang members, and the mentally insane to come into our country totally unchecked and unvetted. All anyone has to do is look up his record. Something very severe should happen to these treasonous thugs that want to destroy our country, but couldn't because I came along. Make America great again, end quote. And finally, I don't think we've talked about this, but former FBI Director James Comey posted on his Instagram account late last week ahead of the release of his latest book this week that he and his wife were walking on a beach and just saw a formation of seashells spelling out the numbers 8647, which lefty radicals have been using as code to ditch or get rid of, wink wink, President Trump. He deleted the post and was reportedly interviewed by the Secret Service afterwards. Well, this week his book came out, and at a signing event, very sparsely attended signing event, I'll add, Jesse Waters correspondent Johnny Belisario caught up with the former FBI director.
Why are you on an 86 Trump?
All right.
Director?
I'm not taking questions like that now.
Why would you
Just signing the book.
Why would you post that? Director Comey, how was your interview with the Secret Service?
You want the book signed, really?
Absolutely.
Okay, you got it, bud.
Can you sign my seashell too? Which beach is this that you're going to? You find a Kamala seashell, 8647. This is a politically charged beach, Director.
They will.
The seashell? You don't want to sign it?
Thank you.
That's what happened while we were away.
One of the dumbest, that was great, by the way. One of the dumbest things I've seen this year is lefty engagement farmers going and finding a Jack Posobiec tweet from 3 years ago, 8646, as a what about? Because some dude, some guy on our side who is a professional commentator, engagement farmer, posting a meme like that is morally equivalent to the former freaking director of the FBI. That's your comeback. If I'm Jack Posobiec, man, I'm gonna use that's branding. I mean, I don't know who he's contracted with, but hey, man, our enemies think that I'm on par with the former director of the FBI. I'm not getting paid enough. Okay. Aaron's Montage brought to you by our friends over at Angel Studios. They're the team behind The King of Kings. You guys know how much I love that film. It's an absolute masterpiece, in my opinion. Sound of Freedom, another masterpiece from a couple of years ago as well. Their latest out this weekend for Memorial Day weekend with Mr. Angel Studios, Neil McDonough himself. It's called The Last Rodeo. He's the oldest rider to ever enter the arena, and he is doing it all to risk saving his grandson. And it's about fighting for the people you love. It's raw, heartfelt. It's about courage. And now it's about to hit the theaters. If you want to make sure you beat the rush and get your tickets right now, get your tickets today at angel.com/Steve. That's angel.com/Steve. Also, don't forget about the new show we just launched here at The Blaze, Strange Encounters with Rick Burgess. So what is all this talk of strange phenomenon? How much of it is real? How much of it is occultic deception? How much of it is spiritual warfare? He gets into all of that with Strange Encounters with Rick Burgess. It's a brand new show launching right now here on Blaze TV, and you can get access to it and all the exclusive content we do every day on Blaze TV by going to blazetv.com/Deace. And if you enter in the promo code Deace, you'll get $20 off your annual subscription. It comes out to about $8 a month. You're paying that much, most of you are, for that coffee you get every day. 26 cents a day, and you get not just Rick's new show, but all the exclusive content that we produce for you each and every single day right here at Blaze TV. Go to blazetv.com/Deace and use the code Deace for the discount at blazetv.com/Deace. I have to tell you, I felt about your montage today, Aaron, like I did that one a couple of weeks ago. That was freaking cathartic to watch that.
I was looking for some more because I was halfway through doing this and I'm like, oh boy, there's got to be something I can. And if I looked hard enough, but this was kind of what was driving my news feed, my flags this morning. So,
I mean, I could give about 4 or 5 amens and that'll preaches to that montage. And if we just look at it holistically, the level of messaging, and yes, I agree. I agree with everything the President of the United States said about what happened during the Biden administration. We have said much of the same thing, if not even more, shall we say, bluntly, on the show here over the last couple of days, okay? So I know there will be a section of this audience that will say, well, then refer it to Pam Bondi. And Frank, let me take a back step to that. I actually hope, like everyone in this audience, would then have the reaction of, well, that's great, Mr. President, but send this over to your Attorney General. She's the head of the Department of Justice, and let's have some trials for treason, right? You're right. And that is the right and proper reaction, okay? But you have to understand the way things move ultimately is first you have to win the war of words before you can get to the actions that will then win the war itself. The level of messaging by multiple people throughout this entire montage, it's just way beyond. You know, we're coming up on, next week will be my 25th anniversary as a full-time broadcaster. It'll be next week. 25 years I've been in this business. And then June 6th will be my 19th anniversary of being working full-time in politics. And the difference in messaging from what you are seeing, and keep in mind, Aaron is highlighting these are things said by cabinet secretaries, agency and department heads, the president, right? This isn't, go find our favorite, conservative media personality and flame on, okay? The level of confrontation here. I mean, Marco Rubio, where you been? Where you been for a decade, bro? Okay? Because I'm going to tell you right now, my friend, if you sounded like this in 2014, instead of standing up with Lindsey Graham and a feeble John McCain to do amnesty, Donald Trump probably never runs for president. Ted Cruz never runs for president. You're the president of the United States. You win that nomination, man, going away? I mean, just flat out, and not in the, actually, you're the real racist. The Dems are the real racist. Retarded way that we do to sell that to boomers to give us engagement numbers who, because, generationally, they're rightfully tired of being smeared as racist for 40 years. Just flat out, right to his face. I mean, I'm not the one that brought up race. I mean, you just clearly hate the fact that they're white people. And you can see their reactions. You can see Tim Kaine is used to a certain level of dialogue. He gets to frame the conversation. He gets to frame the argument. And whoever is standing up there representing us in between, thank you, sir, may I have another, and ankle grabs, okay, may get one little talking point or two in, But the whole thing will be done at the premise and the paradigm set forth by the likes of Tim Kaine. And Marco Rubio just said, we're not doing that. Not happening. Even more blatant example is what RFK Jr. did to Patty Murray. And you can just see how instantly...
This is the second time in the last couple of weeks he's done this to somebody like that.
Yes. And you can just see how their demeanor and everything changes. They're unsettled.
Seriously? Seriously.
They're not used to being punched back. They're not used to it. They're just not used to it. And guys, how many times have you heard me say over the years that the greatest lesson I learned from the 3 years I spent contributing on MSNBC, the greatest lesson I learned was there's no there. There's nothing, because I mean, I didn't know. I thought these have to be smart people. They have to know things we don't know. There's got to be some validity to their argument. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there has to be some. It's got to be coming from some place of rationality, but maybe just with a different worldview than me, okay? There's got to be some legit basis for why someone would think this way. And I came away from almost 3 years of contributing to MSNBC with the conclusion that there was not. There really was not. There's nothing there. And there never was anything there. All that there is a will to power, a desire for power, and for control of you and over you. And whatever position at the time will give me that, I will take. So right now, aligning with Big Pharma, they believe, gives them the power they want. So they will. And all that stuff they did for decades about corporations are bad and don't care about people, they didn't mean it. And they probably don't. We don't even know what they mean. They probably don't even mean the alliance they have with Big Pharma now. I don't even. All that matters is what grants me the power and control I want, and I'll just take that position because their father is the father of lies. He operates the same way. And you always, a team takes on the identity of its head coach. I mean, RFK Jr. just absolutely eviscerated her. And then Jay Bhattacharya. Again, confrontation isn't a tone, folks, any more than kindness is, or niceness, or love is. We operate as if these things are tonal in nature. They are not. They're motivational in nature. Often, does a kind tone come with being loving? That often happens, right? Mm-hmm. And often a confrontational tone does come with confrontation, right? Often, but those aren't absolutes. When God is walking through the garden and says to Adam, "What you doing?" That wasn't quite the same as some of the other confrontations that God has in the scriptures, but it was still a confrontation nevertheless. And so what I also loved about this montage is you got the gamut of tone. And then there is Mr. Polished, Mr. Dignified, Jay Bhattacharya, who never has a hair out of place, man, never is caught with his britches down, whether he's getting railroaded by his own university, okay, whether he's getting called a Nazi sympathizer, whether he's getting appointed to maybe the agency that does more granting than any other bureaucratic entity in the United States federal government. It doesn't matter. The guy is just as cool as the other side of the pillow, man. He's just the Iceman, George Gervin. Doesn't matter. It's like it wouldn't matter if Jay Bhattacharya were running a marathon or sitting at a cubicle, resting heart rate 68. That just doesn't change. It does not change. Right? That is a temperament I was not given. Okay? That was not granted unto me by our mutual creator. So I must confess I'm a tad jealous of it. All right? But in his own way and in a different tone, because here's how you can tell. Here's how, it's actually the Bhattacharya clip that proves my point more than anything else. Because he's just not throwing hands like RFK Jr. is in that clip. He's just not like, hey, you flung this this turd at me. I'm just going to fling it right back to you. How you like them apples? That's what Marco Rubio did. All right, Marco Rubio went full, how you like them apples? Okay? And RFK Jr. just said, see that woodshed? We're going out back. But did you notice, though, that Jay Bhattacharya didn't sound like that at all? Guys, just looking at the evidence, I think we have to admit there's a possibility that the Wuhan virus was created in a lab. And unfortunately, furthermore, there's a real possibility that this agency helped to fund that research. Right? There was no smoke coming out of his ears like with RFK Jr., right? Okay. There was no buffalo stance like Marco Rubio had. There was none of that. Just stood up there, very dignified, and almost like he was delivering an unfortunate lament. Hey, guys, I got some bad news here. Okay? Did you notice the reaction was the same? Huh? You mean they didn't sit there and say, wow, that is not news I wanted to hear, Dr. Bhattacharya, and it's completely contrary to everything that Dr. Fauci told us and Dr. Collins told us while standing at that same podium for the last few years. But because you delivered it in such a professional fashion, I think that we're going to probably go ahead and consider this new information and treat it maturely, and we're just going to follow Is that what they did? No. They did him the same way Patty Murray tried to do RFK Jr. and the same way Tim Kaine tried to do Marco Rubio. Because, folks, it ain't about your tone, and it never was. Now, that doesn't mean that tone never matters. It just doesn't matter in this era. In previous eras, where people understood objective truth existed, then the delivery method mattered a lot. But we are not in that epistemological era now. We are in the era of my truth. We are in the era of truth is conjured, not found and discovered. I haven't told this story in a long time. I think it's a good moment to reset it. There was a young man that the party establishment was trying to line up to run for governor of Iowa back when I was a local radio host named Christian Fong. And
I remember him.
And Christian Fong went to a big mega church out in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and he was the first attempt by the party establishment to stop Bob Vander Plaats from winning the primary. Okay, so they went out and got a guy who's first-generation immigrant, goes to an evangelical church, but a pretty soft-headed one. Okay, and they put him on my show to basically test him out and see if he can lie to my audience sufficiently or not. That's basically what they were doing. Okay, so I put him on the show and interviewed him, and he gave the right answers to the questions. Okay. A few days later, I got a couple emails about Christian Fong, but they weren't from the right. They were from the left. Hey, I'm with Act Blue, Iowa. You know that Act Blue, the hard left Democrat donor organization. Yeah, I mean, Christian helped us on this issue, helped us with this project. I listened to, I was excited because I thought he was going to strike this really moderate tone and be the Christian Fong that I know that thinks you guys are crazy. And then he came on and said all the crazy stuff that you guys want him to say. I don't know who the real Christian Fong is now. I didn't think his candidacy was going to go anywhere. And on the chance he was a Christian brother, I chose not to destroy him. I just kept that information to myself until one day when Christian Fong's campaign was going nowhere and he was about to drop out, he finally decides to call me back again and wants to have lunch with me to see if there's a way to salvage his gubernatorial race. And we sit down and I tell him what he has to do. And he looks at me and he says, that won't work. That doesn't get elections. You're wrong about this, Steve. I said, well, right now, brother, you've got 1% in the poll more than me and I'm not running. So apparently you're the expert here. I said, let me tell you a little story, Christian. And I grabbed a napkin and took a pen out of my pocket. I grabbed the napkin at the deli and I took a pen out of my pocket and I said, see, you think, and I drew like little flowers. And I can't draw worth a crap, but I drew the prettiest little flower and tree I possibly could. I said, you think if you say to our enemies, if you say it nice, if you say it with regret, and you even preface it and say, I'm not like Steve Deace on WHO radio. I'm not one of those Christians. I'm not like these people. And then you offer up all those disclaimers and all of that church consultant tone. And then you drop the hammer on them with the truth they need to hear but don't want to. That they will then say to you, oh, yes, I'm able to accept this now. Thank you for the softer side of Sears. I said, except you need to, any of these names sound familiar? And I gave him the names of the people that sent me the emails. And I could just see right away he wasn't back on his heels. I said, yeah, you want to know why I know those names? Because the next day after you were on my show months ago, these guys emailed me and told me you're a total fraud. And they like itemized for me all the stuff you had done to help them out on leftist issues that our audience would be appalled by. And then I took my pen and I took another napkin. And I colored it in really dark and hard as I could, to the point that the pen cut through the napkin and wrote on the table itself. I said, see, here's me. That's how I do it, okay? Now you think, because you draw these pretty little flowers, that's why they won't hear, and that's why they won't listen, and that's why they won't convert, or that's why they won't turn or turn away. Do you think this is why? And that the reason why they won't listen to somebody like me, even though, by the way, I'm attracting a way larger audience than you, bro. Okay? But you think that they won't listen to me because of how dark and bold are the colors I speak in. And I turn your buddies off. And yet, when you showed up on my show with your soft tone and your nice way of saying things that just all the church growth consultants with their Hawaiian shirts would all check off on, those same buddies of yours could not wait to email me and betray you nevertheless. And smoke you nevertheless. And that's why you're at 1%. Because nobody trusts you. Because you have yet to learn, and you're learning right now the hard way, my friend, you have yet to learn that it doesn't matter how you say it. They don't want it said. And it never was about how you said it. It never was. This montage proves this point once and for all. Multiple different tones, multiple different personalities. And Jay Bhattacharya says it as classy and dignified as you possibly can, with panache. They walked out on him, nevertheless, and turned their backs too. It's not about the tone. It's never been about the tone. It's always been about the truth, no matter what tone is used. Now, that may be not true in every era, but it sure is it's true in this one. Gentlemen, your thoughts?
Well, I just have two questions. Are the NIH folks who walked out, are they A, going to be fired because they walked out on the brown guy? Or B, going to be fired because they're flat earthers and not scientists? I mean, there's multiple reasons there. Based on past precedent, that isn't my precedent, it's theirs. And also, I just have to echo Aaron's learning Chinese today. Like, this Jake Tapper cannot go back to that same job, right? Right? Again, by his standards, by your standards, CNN, he can't go back. Or is something else going on here?
Yeah, because remember what we're talking about here. This is the most powerful individual on the face of the planet, the President of the United States. There was one half of the country who was screaming and yelling, he's not fit, he's not mentally competent. And you're saying now that it's safe, you're right. Okay, even if we take that at face value, that should be firings, resignations, maybe even if you were actually a serious journalist, you would go up on the top of the Turner Center in Atlanta, Georgia, and commit seppuku.
Correct.
But no, you're not serious. You're just as slithery as you were 4 years ago. As we discussed last week, he's just displaying sociopathic behavior. That's the simplest explanation here. Want to make Occam's razor great again? That's the simplest explanation.
Buy, sell, or hold is next. When a mother with an unplanned pregnancy is deciding about the future of her unborn child, maybe her own soul, frankly, to become a murderess or not, it can be overwhelming. Wants to make the right choice, but a lot of influences out there in our society telling her that murder is the right choice. Well, Preborn's whole ministry is to love these women enough to confront them with the truth and empower them to act on it and choose life and to have an eternal moment by doing so. Because just like we were talking a minute ago, confrontation isn't a tone any more than love is. And when Preborn's tone would be different maybe than what we do on our show, but they're confronting these women nevertheless. Sometimes these women walk away and go and murder their own children. That does happen sometimes. They ain't batting 1,000 against the spirit of the age. Unfortunately, none of us are. But they are batting pretty high. And they would not be able to do that without support from folks like you. You guys have been so generous. You've created stories like Briella. She was ready to take the abortion pill, end her pregnancy, but then it never, miraculously, never came. So she ended up at a preborn pregnancy clinic instead. She got that ultrasound that one of you paid for. And that eternal moment happened. She realized it's not an unviable tissue mass. That's another human being with its own heartbeat. And now she has the baby boy that she always prayed for. So you make this stuff happen when you support Preborn and their clinics nationwide, and then the counseling and the other support that they provide these moms now in this new family now. Up to 2 years after the baby is born, they do this all free of cost to mom and her baby, although none of it is free. And they can do that because of so many of you. So let's keep that generosity going. At preborn.com/Steve, you can make a tax-deductible donation today at preborn.com/Steve. Also, we are halfway home in making Richie Meets the Rainbow a profitable investment by my company before it ever gets into retail. I did a little test on my LinkedIn page today, just out of curiosity. Because LinkedIn is really spirit of the agey stuff, right? Okay. So I wanted to see if I just promoted Richie Meets the Rainbow. In fact, let me look right now, because I haven't looked. I put up a little promo to Richie Meets the Rainbow on my LinkedIn page. And I wanted to see how it would go over. And if it would, I didn't share the video of the story. Okay. Just, hey, it's my new book. We're coming out for Pride Month. All right. Did you like that? Coming out for Pride Month. Richie Meets the Rainbow, a heartwarming tale.
That's getting memed right now.
Of childhood enlightenment. Indeed it is. Yes. And you're welcome for that, by the way. I'm your muse. But I just wanted to, kind of a test to see would me attaching my name, even subversively to Pride, activate the censorship industrial complex, right? So I put this up this morning, first thing on my LinkedIn page. It's still up. I just checked it right now. It's still up. All right. Okay. So, but we don't know. We have absolutely no clue what will happen when this thing hits retail in the middle of June.
Does Margot from Media Matters moonlight over there at LinkedIn or something?
She's getting the word out as we speak. Yes. Hello, Ethel. Indeed. Just remember, it's DEACE. All right. Anyway, we are, just in case the spirit of the age shuts this puppy down. And believe me, the spirit of the age didn't want this book to be made. That's why we had to make it ourselves. That's the first time ever I paid for a wide release book out of my own pocket. All right. So we are offering you guys, as kind of our GoFundMe team here on the show, you get an exclusive hardcover, full-sized, personally autographed by yours truly edition. It's called the Pride Edition. These will be the only full-size hardcover, personally autographed by me. Not even book plates. I am personally signing all 2,500 of these books. Okay, and you are the only people that we're going to give these to. And if we sell these out, then the book is in the black before we even have to run into the spirit of the age's censorship industrial complex, okay? So if you want to get your copy of Richie Meets the Rainbow, we're at 50% sold right now, which, considering that our web server had us down for 8 hours on Monday when we launched because of the instant reaction you guys had and trying to recalibrate from that, we lost 8 hours, right after we did the read. So, I mean, that's an amazing amount that we have sold already. All right. So we're at 50% capacity. That means we got about 1,200 of these left right now. All right. At richiemeetstherrainbow.com is where you can go. RICHIE. It'll ship to you in June. All right, you'll get the special Pride edition with the sticker there, full-sized hardcover special editions. These are the only versions of these that we are selling, and they're for just you guys before we throw it out there in the Gen Pop and then see how many death threats I get. All right, and if I don't get at least one, then I didn't do my job, if I'm just being honest about that. RichieMeetsTheRainbow.com, RICHIE. RichieMeetsTheRainbow.com is where you can go. That's RichieMeetsTheRainbow.com. And thank you guys so much, man. The response to this has been killer. All right, so we're almost there. Thank you. Let's get to buy, sell, or hold. And you guys know how this works. You make the submissions. Aaron gathers said submissions, selects the ones that he wants Todd and I to pontificate upon. We'll get through as many of those here in the next 50 minutes or so as we can. And then the ones that we can't get to are what remains for our subscribers in the overtime at blazetv.com/Deace, code Deace for $20 off. All right. And Todd, you and I, we can buy it. We can sell it. Maybe even offer a reason why we are doing so. But then you are permitted to use the hold. You are. Okay. You are permitted to use the hold. Okay. But there's a stiff penalty that goes with using the hold, right? Has to be. Has to be. It's an act of emasculation. It's an act of cowardice. All right. So if you use your hold today, you are going to have to help Lindsey Graham meet the rainbow.
No.
Taste the rainbow, maybe, even.
No.
Aaron, fire away.
Okay, we'll start with Uncontexted 2, Uncontexted Deace 2 Electric Boogaloo. Some new ideas for the next Richie special editions. Richie meets
Compost edition.
Richie meets Earth Day Compost edition.
That is tremendous. Oh my gosh. For those of you that don't recall, because I only bring this up every year, the co-founder of Earth Day murdered his girlfriend and then composted his remains in the back of his Toyota, okay, which does actually demonstrate he was really committed to recycling, okay? But that is what that is a reference to, and that is tremendous. Yes, that is great.
What's the over-under on Steve completing this work within the next week?
Next commercial break?
Yes.
That's great.
Next up, Richie meets vaccines.
Oh, Magical Power Edition.
Magical Power Edition.
That is tremendous. Holy cow, that is good.
And then Richie meets the NIL, Connor Stallions.
Connor Stallions Edition. You even got the 1L right. That one I might do today, as a matter. I might start with that one, actually. All right.
Got 7,500 more signatures in you.
Nice.
It's gold, Jerry.
Yes, that is. I almost feel like we should just stop now and just move on to, vein splitting. Asking any of the other submissions to follow that, I think that's a tough haul. Okay. What a rousing start that was. Those were all various shades of brilliance. That was extremely well done. Thank you.
All right, we go to our other meme account, Dacian Memes for Pumpkin Spiced Queens. Lindsey Graham is ecstatic that Nancy Mace broke the seal on senatorial public nudity.
You did it! I thought there was no way we could possibly follow that up. Okay.
We're such a stupid country, but nailed it.
No, aside from the fact that Nancy Mace is in the House, not the Senate, but it
congressional.
Yeah, congressional. But that is. Did you guys see the Babylon Bee headline?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Nancy Mace vows to continue showing nudes of herself until she stops exploitation of women. Yes. And then I responded with that Mad Men meme. All right. How about we don't actually stop Congress from letting people, suck on the government teat, but we just give you Nancy Mace's mammary glands. What do you think? Huh? No?
What a world.
It is. Dude, all right? Who sat here and told you a year and a half ago Nancy Mace is one step away from a wet t-shirt contest? Who said that? Who said it?
You.
I did, in this very chair. You could just see the arc is coming. The woman is shameless. All right? The woman is beyond shame. She was recruited by Kevin McCarthy as an anti-Trumper. And now she is doing the things like if Laura Loomer And if Laura Loomer were on a meth-induced bender, this is the stuff Nancy Mace is doing now, okay? I mean, it is shamelessness beyond shamelessness to the point I have grown to begrudgingly respect it just because you hate the game, not the player, all right? And so, and announcing, folks, you need to know, I will be showing my breasts today at 3 p.m. She did this.
To stop the exploitation of women.
Yes. Now you, and then Jesse Kelly retweeted her announcement tweet, said, I support this.
Now you need to write Richie meets Nancy Mace.
Oh my gosh. She showed up at a prayer breakfast, guys, and said, sorry I'm late. Sorry I'm late. I was hitting it with my shack up. She said this. She showed up at a prayer meeting at a church and said, sorry, I'm late. I was hitting it with my shack up, man.
By the end of you writing all these Richie books, Richie is going to look like Matthew McConaughey at Dallas Buyers Club.
Yes.
It's just smoking heaters. Little Richie. Never stood a chance.
Oh, gosh. What do you you can only laugh at this stuff, man. You can only laugh. All right?
We aren't going to make it.
Yeah. We're not going to make it, are we? We're not going to make it. All right. We are going to make it to the next submission, though, barely.
We do have a more serious submission here, which usually when I say that means that it's not, but it is this time. Clinton Shaw says, this puts Protestants, particularly evangelicals, in a tough spot. In John 10:22, Jesus celebrates Hanukkah, a feast found only in 1st and 2nd Maccabees, 1st Maccabees 4:59, 2nd Maccabees 1:18. Those are books included in the Greek Septuagint, but not the Hebrew Tanakh. So either Jesus affirms the authority of Maccabees as scripture, or he upholds extra-biblical tradition, both of which Protestants and evangelicals reject.
Well, now this is my turn to do what Todd often does. This is actually not what... I will admit to you, unfortunately, just like you'll admit to me, unfortunately, this is what it looks like Catholics practice these days, but it's not actually what Catholics believe. How many times have we had that conversation? Mm-hmm. I will admit to you that, unfortunately, it looks like this is what Protestants and evangelicals practice today, but it is actually not what they believe. Protestants and evangelicals do not inherently reject tradition at all. By the way, what you're calling tradition was just history in Jesus' time. Okay, so the Maccabee rebellion would have been within what, 100 years or so, a couple hundred years
of the time of Christ.
Of the time of Christ, right? Like the 2nd century BC. Is that when that was?
Yeah, 2nd century BC.
All right, so this would have been akin to. Remember, he's a member of a country. This is their history, and it would have been akin to. We're about a couple hundred years away from the Civil War. Couple hundred years away from the War of 1812. Okay, this was part of the history. So I also don't understand your point that Jesus, the Word of God, Jesus did something in the Word of God, and somehow that says there. Let me put this in another way you might understand. You are actually making my argument for me. You are actually saying, ironically enough, that the time between the testaments is confirmed by the authority of Scripture. That's what you're saying. I completely agree. That's my answer.
Todd, any thoughts?
Well, I am Catholic, but I don't. There's no point. I guess make sure when you're having discussions like this, and I don't think there wasn't anything inherently snotty. You have to know your audience in both directions. Are there people of good faith who want to hear you out? Like yesterday's conversation that we have got a lot of good responses about the one we had yesterday. Or are they always just kind of doing a version of gotcha trivia? I mean, in terms of the different number of books in the Catholic for the Protestant Bible, if we just all agree upon the basic contentious history that is laid out in Scripture itself, the Judaizers, the pressure to conform that Peter and Paul were arguing about, you realize that one of the main, if not the main reasons why this happened is the simple fact of the matter is the extra books in the Catholic Bible were written in Greek and not in Hebrew. Mm-hmm. And these people, this
is actually the least of the fights between Catholics.
Yes, this is not this is nothing to fight and die over. I obviously agree that Maccabees should be in the Bible. I understand, because I understand the history, though. I understand that the circling of wagons at the time, it makes some degree of sense. And if we can do that, then this. Looking back, this is not something that we need to be breaking each other over.
No, I mean, ultimately, you went to Scripture to prove a point that an event is confirmed and was venerated. I agree. That's exactly what I believe. I agree.
Am I not thinking this through? But whenever Scripture is cited in order to make the point that Scripture is not the sole authority, isn't it kind of circular?
It's a circular argument. Yeah, it's a circular argument. It is. Because ultimately you're citing Scripture as the authority. I listened to a sports talk show on the way in this morning, and the guy was talking about Bill Belichick, similar to what we talked about on the overtime yesterday. He goes, just further proof that if you think, whether it's history, religion, or anything in this world, you think you've got it all, you've got it figured out. You don't. You can't figure anything out in this world. And I thought to myself, well, how do I know that that's true? I mean, if you can't figure anything out, that's a statement of what?
Truth.
Yeah, a statement of absolutism.
Yes,
yeah,
finality.
That's a statement. It's a self-refuting statement.
Well,
it's a self-refuting statement. Okay.
I will say it can be a circular argument, but there's no argument that Catholics don't respect Scripture at the very least as co-equal, as if not as like first among equals, as we talked about with the Pope yesterday. But it's not circular reasoning to respect the Bible enough to point out that the Bible itself never says sola scriptura. That's no different than saying that what you said, the Bible itself never says the word Pope. You're right.
It never says the word Trinity. So these are things that are doctrines that were developed terms that were developed based on people's exegetical doctrines from the Bible. So the argument, therefore, becomes whether they're the right exegetical doctrines or not. Yeah, correct. All right, we'll come back. Hour 2 is next. More buy, sell, or hold. I'm going to tell you, man, the bar's pretty high, though.
Yes, it is.
After that start. All right, stay tuned. Greetings. We are back with Hour 2, live and on demand here on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Todd Erzen and Aaron McIntyre. I'm Steve Deace. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox, which you can take advantage of by emailing the show steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, me, we, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Don't forget to subscribe to our new YouTube channel, which we had to start all over because of all the terrible censorship that was completely unjustified they gave us in the first one. At Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube. And then finally, if you wouldn't mind, if you love the podcast version, and thanks if you've already done this, because many of you have, leave us a 5-star review wherever you podcast from. And then maybe if you're just bored, go find other podcast platforms you don't use and leave us 5-star reviews there. We'd appreciate that even more. You can also hit subscribe, or if you're on iTunes, follow. And that way, every time we drop a new episode, it drops there in your podcast feed every single time. Thanks if you've done that too. Thanks to our friends over at Beam with their Dream Powder. This is where you want to get the absolute best night's sleep from a company founded and run by people who share the same values of hard work, integrity, America first, delivering results. It's a healthy nighttime blend packed with science-backed ingredients like magnesium, melatonin, and more, shown to improve sleep so you can wake up refreshed, ready to go take on the day. I've used Dream several times, and dude, here's the best endorsement I can give. Every time I use Beam, I don't get up in the middle of the night to pee. I mean, that's the best I can say, man. That is a deep night's sleep. If you're a man post 50, Todd, can I get an amen on that?
Amen.
That's an amen. All right, you are in a deep sleep, okay? So here's the deal. Beam is giving our followers here on the Steve Deace Show the ultimate Patriot discount. You're getting up to 40% off to try their best-selling Dream Powder. Comes in several different flavors, low sugar, low carbs, so you're not tacking things on at the end of the night. You don't want to do that if you're living a healthy lifestyle as well. Again, up to 40% off for a limited time if you go to shopbeam.com/Steve. BEAM as in Mary, beam as in beam in your eye. Shopbeam.com/Steve. Use the code Steve at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/Steve. Use the code Steve for up to 40% off and sleep better, wake up stronger, show up ready for your family, your work, and your country. All right, because when you're well rested, you're unstoppable. Shopbeam.com/Steve and code Steve for the discount. Okay, I'm going to give my own little buy, sell, or hold real quick. Just something I saw during the break. You guys okay if I put a submission in? All right.
Yes.
Buy, sell, or hold. This is one of the greatest moments in the modern history of the U.S. presidency.
There's nothing this government can do. With or without you, people are going to occupy land. We require no permission from you, from the president, from no one. We don't care. We can do whatever you want to do. Who are you to tell us whether we can occupy land or not? We are going to occupy land. Yeah. South Africa occupy land. That's who we are. What to do? How can we draw my membership from this useless parliament? Yes, honorable member. Must never be scared to kill. A revolution demands that at some point there must be killing, because the killing is part of a revolutionary act. Shoot to kill. No, sir. Kill the poor, the farmer. Kill the poor, the farmer.
What you just saw is Donald Trump hosted South Africa's communist president at the White House today. And when South Africa's communist president tried to deny that there are calls for white genocide in his country, the beginning of that clip where Trump motions over, hey, take a look at this. And they put up there, right on the screens in the White House, in front of the media and in front of everybody, including the South African president himself, clips of calls for genocide right there in his own country, including, you just heard the audio, can't have revolution without killing. I'm going to tell you right now, if Donald Trump called me on this phone, because I had the same number I had in 2013, 2014, 2015 when he used to. If he called me on this phone and said, Steve, you see that wall right there in front of you? I just need you to take a break from your show and run right through it right now. I'd do it right now. I mean, I can't envision a better use of a bully pulpit since like Reagan calling the Soviets the evil empire, because you have to understand the consequences of this across the board. Right now, there are a lot of fools, a lot of demonic fools sitting as heads of state all over the world who are like, I'm going to get my pants pulled down too. I mean, this is buy, sell, or hold. One of the greatest uses of the bully pulpit of the White House you have seen in your lifetime. Buy, sell, or hold.
Buy.
That was just a taste,
yes,
too, of what just went down a few minutes ago at the White House. Printed off a stack of articles and stories flying in the face of what that South African President Cyril Ramaphosa was trying to claim.
I voted for that. In fact, no, I didn't. That's more than I voted for, actually. That's more than I voted for. I haven't said that very often. That is more than I voted for, right there. I mean, that is... that is devastating, man. That is, to quote the great prophet Jim Rome, phenomenal.
And oh, by the way, at its root, the ethos of what's going on there is the same thing that's going on in the tariff wars. It's about the hard sitting at the table and playing high stakes poker. Who's going to flinch?
Which is why this is such a devastating clip. The message that this sends to lots of fools around the world. Okay, we will similarly. There's lots of ways we can Moab you. Lots of ways.
Exactly.
You want to step out of line? It might be a literal Moab. We might invite your head of state over here to the White House in front of the entire world and pull his pants down.
We might tariff your entire economy into oblivion.
That's right.
It could be anything.
So
or we can all be groovy together.
Yes. So people can see there really was no there between his legs the entire time. So they can all see that with their own eyes. That is...
And especially
that's phenomenal, man.
And
that's
implied
phenomenal.
in all that is like, it's interesting. Genocidal maniac commie. Now look at you just sitting in this chair. What you got?
Yeah.
Where's the tough guy at? It's pathetic.
It kind of makes you wonder why. Why haven't we been doing stuff like this for 30 years? Right? I mean, why haven't we been doing stuff like this for 30 years?
No good answers to that.
All the answers to that question are bad.
Blame Democrats.
Regardless if it was in the White House, why haven't we been doing stuff like this for 30 years?
Blame Democrats, blame Republicans, blame the press, blame our comfortable, can't be bothered populists.
Yes.
All of it.
So it's systemic, is what you're saying.
It's been bad for a very long time.
Yeah.
And he's just like, he's Bill Murray on Groundhog Day. I'm not playing by your rules anymore.
All right, let's get back to regular order.
All right, continuing on with my sell or hold, we're just going to stick with Todd here. Jeff Gibson says by the end of the year, Todd will have his beard perfectly coiffed to match the nefarious poster behind him on camera. He's already getting close.
That's interesting. I hadn't even thought about that. I'm going to let you answer that first, Todd. What say you?
See, there's no plan with this thing.
There you go.
At all. And see, look, we are about to get into
And nefarious has plans.
This is not my winter beard. We're almost in summer. It's just, it comes and it goes whenever I decide.
It's quite possible it'll just be completely shaven when we come in tomorrow.
It is possible.
Yeah. How long does it take you after you shave to get to that?
To this?
Yeah. Because I'm just going to tell you right now, I could never shave the rest of my life. I would, seriously, I could never shave the rest of my life. I would not get to that.
This is getting pretty bushy. I mean, this is probably like 6 weeks or something.
I'm just telling you, I could live the rest of my life, never shave, and I would never get to that. Would never happen. I mean, I'm told my ancestors were Sicilian and Italian, but I have so little hair. I can grow so little facial hair. I'm convinced I'm actually Polish. Isn't that a Polish thing that they can't grow beards and stuff? Isn't that what they're
doing? Well, as I've said, you do have the palate of a 12-year-old boy. That may have had effects of... Now you have the face of a 12-year-old boy.
You think all the sugar I ingested diminished my T level? Is that what you're saying?
This is what vinegar does to you.
There's a strong possibility. There's at least a contributing factor. I have to admit that. Yes. All right.
Next up, we go to Doug Catbird. The biggest benefit of Maha joining MAGA is that Maha wants more than talking points and will elevate real primary challengers to take out long-standing backstabbers like Senator Cassidy.
And yes.
I don't know how broad that'll get, but it's certainly true.
It's true right now.
Yeah.
Now the problem Maha will have as it grows in popularity is this will become a larger factor. Okay. When you get to the point that people realize there is gold in them hills, okay, then you are facing the same temptations that my political forefathers, the Christian, the original religious right, had to face those temptations. The Tea Party didn't face those temptations. It succumbed to them right away, okay, and was over as soon as it started, right? So I think one of the most subtle, important moments of the Trump era was earlier this winter, and it was just a real quick thing you can remember over the weekend. Earlier this winter, several MAGA influencers were paid to advocate for letting people continue to drink soda on food stamps, right? On food stamps, right? Okay. And the MAHA people went after, some of these are people, names you would know. I mean, they get promoted on our network. They've been on our show. They have their own shows with their own good-sized audiences, okay? And I mean, the MAHA people went after all these people by name. because again, they're like, we don't necessarily have the same audience. We don't care if we come to you. We don't care if we get invited to the, yakety yak, speaker circuit of we have our own self-contained ecosystem here, our own self-contained universe here. And we were here before MAGA was here, and we'll probably be here after MAGA is gone. All right. So now I don't know that that's true, but that's their attitude. Okay. And so they basically said, we don't owe you anything. You wouldn't have won without us. You guys are way bigger than us, but you just would have lost another close election without us. So you owe us. We don't owe you. And no, we're not here to promote drinks with 50 grams of sugar to hand those out to low-income people on food stamps to be subsidized by taxpayers. I don't care how much money the Coca-Cola and its associate companies paid you, to which I thought, why didn't they come to Stu and I and to promote Coke Zero? Because we probably just would have done that just for a case, okay?
Affinity. Yeah.
Again, why he doesn't have a beard, right there.
Just send the samples, okay? But that moment, and you saw something from some of the more notorious, I would not even say they're influencers, grifters, okay? You saw something from that grifter crowd we have not seen the entire Trump era, humility. And several of them came out and said, you're right, I shouldn't have done that, I'm sorry. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And none of that happens without Maha there acting like they're the conscience of the coalition, okay? So, I'm just going to tell you, though, if you're Maha, be careful, all right, about glass houses and stones. Because the more you grow, the more people realize, I can make money off of this, I can monetize this. And that kind of infiltration can hit your ranks as well. Okay?
You don't want to be
careful with that.
You don't want to become college football is the lesson we're talking about.
Well, that's one way of looking at it. Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. Yep. Okay.
Next, we go to G. Roberts, alien in my own nation, who says, when Vivek is elected governor, Steve will defend his Buddhist beliefs. Buy, sell, or hold, Vivek, and P.S., Vivek is going to hell without Jesus.
Well, I would, number one, Vivek is not a Buddhist. He is a Hindu, number one. Number two, everyone goes to hell without Jesus, whether I like him or not, whether you should vote for him or not, whether you love them or not, whether they
It's not just unique to Vivek.
Yeah, it's not just unique to Vivek.
What's this person's handle? Is it
G. Roberts.
Is it a
Greg?
Although I do like the alien in my own nation part. I do like that part.
Well, like what?
Okay.
This is just trolling. This isn't trying to get anywhere, solve anything. This is dumb.
I mean, Buddhists and Hindus could not be much different. I mean, Buddhists are atheists. They are functional atheists. Hindus have tens of thousands of gods, all right? So, I mean, they're from a Christian perspective, their respective heresies are on completely different ends of the spectrum. Buddhists don't believe there's a God. Hindus will literally worship just about anything as one.
Todd, any further thoughts?
No, they'll probably just get me in trouble.
Next, we go to Joe Allen. The most powerful person in the Biden White House may have been that gender studies intern handling the auto pen.
Dude.
It's as likely as anything
Yes,
else.
it is. Yes, it is. It would explain things like that Title IX thing we talked about. That was like the last policy pronouncement of the Trump administration or the Biden administration. Hey, we're going to pay the rowing team the same amount of money as football players. Okay. That's the kind of stuff the women's studies, a gal with the auto pen would come up with a policy like that right on the way out the door. That is as possible as anything.
And there's so many of them. I mean, just this Libby, the main Congress representative who the Supreme Court said in a 7-2 vote could return to voting again in Maine, and they overturned the tyranny up there. But look at the two people who weren't on her side, two women who said, yeah, it's okay that she didn't get a voice just because she doesn't think you should be able to trans the kids. I mean, these people are all over the place.
This thing is going on with the South African president. Trump just looked right at him. Quote, you allow these people to take the land, and then when they take the land, they're killing the white farmers, and then when they kill the white farmers, nothing happens to them. Folks, Alexa, show me what happens when you try to shoot a guy in the face, but miss. Show me what happens. Okay? Stuff like this happens.
We have another submission from Uncontexted 2. Uncontexted Deace to Electric Boogaloo. Richie meets Nancy Mace.
There it is.
No.
Yeah.
OnlyFans edition.
No.
Let's move some product. Yeah.
OnlyFans edition. I'm getting emails from people telling me that the guy Nancy Mace showed up. I don't know if this is true. Do you guys know? Telling me that the guy she's accusing of doing revenge porn against her is the very guy that she showed up at the prayer breakfast at the church saying, "Hey, my shack up was we were hitting it. That's why I was late."
That is him.
Circle. Wow.
Yes. Steve, you've got lots of books to write when you get home.
The OnlyFans edition. Good night. Good night.
Next, we go to Patrick, who says, since you've given the example that Steve Scalise almost got killed by the left and is still a repugnant Republican, you cannot still use the same reason as an excuse for why President Trump deserves to get whatever he wants out of Congress. Buy, sell, or hold.
I'm not trying to be flippant. I don't understand what that means. Can you clarify that? I don't get it. And it sounds like I should, so I don't understand his point.
Saying it automatically being almost killed should change how you live your life and do things, and that obviously didn't happen with Steve Scalise. So you're wrong with it being causal with Donald Trump.
I just don't think there's any comparison between how Steve Scalise has reacted from getting almost killed to how Donald Trump. I mean, we're just talking about it right now with what's going on with the South African president. How are those events comparable? I mean, I'm asking, how is it possible you could compare how Trump acts post getting almost killed to Steve Scalise? I truly don't understand how you could think they are analogous whatsoever. One guy zigged, the other guy zagged. They're completely opposite, which is my point. That's the whole point.
But he's saying it must have something
you're using
independent of the bullet that you're saying that was causal and transformative.
Okay, I get it then. It's because Trump is reacting in ways I largely like. If he was reacting like Steve Scalise, I wouldn't have never made. Have I ever made the point once about Steve Scalise? That point? No. You know why? Because how many times has Steve Scalise provided anything for me close to what Donald Trump has in the last 120 days of his presidency? How many times? 0.0, Dean Wormer. So he's not afforded any grace from me. He became a worse congressman after getting shot. He's offered me nothing, literally nothing. Trump became a better version of himself. I guess I don't understand. I don't
want
get
to
it.
waste your breath. Listen, I'll say this as a Catholic. You guys still, to this very day, despite evidence that clearly works in the favor objectively of a lot of different Americans, you guys are acting like altar boys, and Trump was like the Catholic priest who abused you back in the 50s. You're like, what?
Let me help you.
You're utterly nuts.
Let me help you. If you want to be critical, a better way of saying it is now that Trump is demonstrating he is willing to buck institutions and disrupt narratives like we're seeing happen with the tariff battle and the South African president, then we should stop making excuses for why he won't do that with Congress. That's the better. Let me help you with your complaint. That is the better way to say what I think you're trying to say. Okay. And you probably would say it that way better if you just didn't have Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah,
and if you were just looking at things, through a rational lens and trying to figure out why if we'll do this to a head of state, why can't we do this to a senator from North Carolina named Tom Tillis, who's got a 41% approval rating? See, that's the right complaint. That's the right complaint. Okay. But there is no moral equivalency to how Trump has responded. Trump has become, by any objective measure, a better version of himself since almost getting killed. And if you don't think that, then you just have Trump derangement syndrome, and I just think we just really don't have much in common. Steve Scalise has gotten worse. And I would argue if Steve Scalise and other Republicans who almost got killed that day, if they would have reacted to almost getting killed the way Trump did, maybe we don't even have Donald Trump right now. And you have the kinds of Republicans that are really nice and gracious that you probably prefer. So get better complaints. Do me a favor. Send drafts of your complaints to me, and I'll help you with those. And then we can maybe get them up on the show so they'll make more sense. And so this will be less embarrassing for you.
Next, we go to Dan.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I was harder on him than you were.
Okay.
So
Right.
Sorry, I was distracted. I just saw another meme from Deace and memes. Gosh.
There's something after the OnlyFans edition? What's after that?
No, this is from Deace and Memes, the other meme account.
All right.
When I said we're coming full circle.
No.
Focus.
No.
It's Lindsey Graham saying, did someone say coming full circle?
No. No.
Should we move on?
Did you guys see the meme I sent you earlier today? The devil whispers in my ear.
No, that I don't want.
Okay,
no.
all right.
No.
Okay.
Next, we go to Dan G. Steve, Todd, and Aaron should, once a month, choose a random city by drawing a name out of a used pumpkin spice Kit Kat box, fly to that city's airport, and do an ambush-style pirate broadcast of the show in the middle of the day.
That is random and specific at the same time. It's brilliant.
We were planning it, but
not just a pumpkin spice Kit Kat box, but a used one.
We were going to do this, but now Steve has too many books to write.
Yes,
I mean, now he's going to be writing Richie Meets Lindsey Graham, and that's.
Appreciate the support, but folks, you got to pick a project for us.
Yes,
or
I'm
Steve.
only one man. Remember that old In Living Color Damon Wayans thing where he's Jamaica? I got 8 job, man. I got 8 job. Remember that?
Yes.
I can only do 8 job. All right.
Joel says, if Dan and Cash are being truthful, the only explanation is Epstein did the deed to himself, but under heavy pressure to do so, like family members threatened, etc., if he didn't off himself.
I agree with this. I do not disagree that the file that Dan Bongino and Cash Patel read came to the conclusion that Epstein killed himself. I doubt the file. Because at a minimum, those who presided over a suicide of the most high-valued target in the entire American penitentiary system should have all lost their jobs, pensions, and everything else. Whole chain of command, everybody. Nobody did. And it's like what you said yesterday, because there's never any accountability. We just can't trust. I'll tell you, our Liz Wheeler, man, she went hard after Cash and Dan on this yesterday. Did you see this?
No.
She put out a very long, detailed post on X yesterday, going hard at both Cash and Dan on this, about why there's no possible way that Jeffrey Epstein just killed himself, right? So you have to ask yourself, okay, Matthew Crookman acts alone. The math club shooter acts alone. How did he penetrate the entire security perimeter of the United States Secret Service and local police? How did he possibly do this? How is it possible that he was able to get within 150 yards of the president for a full-on face shot, and yet he was taken out over 500 yards away? How are those things possible? Okay? How are those things possible? How is it possible that the most high-valued target in the American penitentiary system, who just so happened to have biblical amounts of blackmail on many of the most important, famous people in the hemisphere, how is it possible he was allowed to take himself out with paper and the cameras just so happened to malfunction? Come on, man. Come on. And what is it? What's her? I can never pronounce Maria's last name there at Fox Business.
Bartiromo.
Yeah, she did a disservice by not asking obvious follow-up questions. Those are obvious follow-up questions that need to be asked. Then who was held accountable for this? How did he acquire the paper and the means by which to kill himself? How did that happen? Who was held accountable? How is it possible that it just so happened the cameras malfunction with the most valued target in the entire U.S. penitentiary system being monitored? How is that even remotely possible? There's some follow-up questions I think that should have been asked. And I think it would have been to the benefit of Cash and Dan if those had been asked. Instead, it was just left there, okay, without any clarifications at all. So.
Well, I know something big has to be coming down the pike, if not this, because already people are running side by sides of Bongino, what he said on his show about this and then what he said in that interview. Like, I mean, I'm at the point with Epstein, I don't even really care, but then I look at this and say, like, these guys are, especially Bongino, I mean, he may be risking whatever his future is career-wise if it's not this, if they don't come up with something that's groundbreaking in its revelatory power. So I'm going to let him cook a little bit. There may be reasons. I don't know, but sooner or later you got to have more than that conversation, way more.
I agree, and I say this as I love Dan Bongino, but he took the job.
Yes.
Okay, and this is what comes with the job. Okay, and I have been very defensive of him because, again, the math to me does not add up. Dan is in the 1% of the 1% of our entire industry. He left all that behind. Okay. And he didn't have to do that. He was already serving the cause and serving his country. He's already served the country. He's been NYPD. He's been a Secret Service agent. All right. So he doesn't need this. Kash Patel needs this. Let's be honest. Almost none of us knew who the hell Kash Patel was a few years ago. Okay.
Well, he needs him more.
But Dan does not need this. Dan has a mission field, has a cause. He has respect. He has earned. So this doesn't. Assimilating with the Borg doesn't do anything for Dan. And it certainly would hurt his brand when he has to eventually go back to it, whether that's next week or 4 years from now. Okay? So that math to me still adds up, which is why I'm going to give them more time to give me some more clarity on this. Yeah. But listen, Liz raises a lot of really good questions that just don't make sense. And I think Maria would have done a lot of people a service. Why, if you don't want to give him the time to do that, then don't bring it up. Okay? But she brought it up in the interview. Then there should have been some clarification then. Okay, well, I've got some follow-up questions for this.
Next, we go to Jim Stocker before the break here. Today's GOP is basically the Democrat Party of the 1990s. By 2035, Democrats will literally be flying the hammer and sickle, and the GOP will resemble today's Democrat Party.
There is a lot of truth to this economically, for sure. Culturally, no, it is to the right of where the Democrats were in the 90s. But economically, I don't think there's that much difference between the rhetoric and the things that Bill Clinton talked about in the 90s to Donald Trump. I don't disagree with that economically. And if anything, Trump would be even more populist than Clinton was because he signed NAFTA into law. But culturally, no. The Republican Party today is to the right culturally of really where Republicans or Democrats have been basically since Reagan and the advent of the religious right is what I would say. And that, by the way, is with watering down the abortion issue because we have so many other culture fronts. The abortion issue was the culture war front for decades. We largely agreed on everything else. Okay. Now we're coming apart at the seams. So I don't agree with that culturally, but economically, I think there's a lot of truth to that. Yeah.
Also, the Democrats were actually productive and got that stuff done. We needed Donald Trump to come in and save everybody from Republicans.
That's fair too. All right, we're going to get to the rest of these in the overtime today at blazetv.com/Deace. That's blazetv.com/Deace, but we'll be joined next by Daniel Horowitz. Stay tuned. I know a lot of you are seeing the reports online. People are seeing some positive results with the ivermectin mebendazole compound. Our friend Megan Basham recently put out there on X that with her cancer battle, that you can still be praying for, by the way, that she's deployed that too and saw some good metrics in her data as well as a result. So our friends over at Jace Medical now, they have decided to add a new case option that is specifically this compound. It's a 90-day supply that'll give it to you the fastest, most affordable option available with up to 35% off as well from what you're going to find just about everywhere else. That's just one of the options now they're offering with the Jace case, including the traditional Jace case with the doxycycline, amoxicillin, and more. On top of now, you can get the customizable one for a lot of the meds maybe that you want to make sure you've got a backup of because they could turn out to be the next ivermectin that they smear right when you need it the most. Or if you're fighting cancer, you are a loved one and you want to throw everything you can at it, there's that ivermectin mebendazole option too. So take advantage of that through our friends over at Jace Medical, J-A-S-E. Jace.com is where you want to go, Jace.com. And if you use the code DACE at checkout, you'll get a discount on your order as well. Jace.com, J-A-S-E, code DACE at checkout for the discount on your order. That's Jace.com/Dace. You can go there too. Jace.com/Dace, but enter the code DACE at checkout for a discount on your order. Let's welcome back in our good friend, the prophet of woe and lamentation himself, Daniel Horowitz. It's good to see you again, my friend. Hope your throat's feeling better. How you feeling?
A little bit better, but Steve, until you take the full voice out of me, I'm going to keep saying uncomfortable things.
All right, well, that's why we brought you here. All right. So speaking of uncomfortable, that's a good word to describe I think the way some people feel about what is happening right now in the Middle East, specifically with U.S.-Israeli relations. And I don't know how much of this is posturing, and we kind of have a policy on our show. We did this with the first Trump term too, that if anything from an anonymous source claiming to be from the White House or about it, we just don't report on and react to, okay? Because the one thing in the Trump era is he's got no problem flinging BS out there to counteract their BS. So guys like you and I sometimes don't know what's real and what's Memorex, okay? But there have been reports that JD did not visit Israel to make it look like that, they were supportive of the Gaza operation. There are now the White House. Trump was just asked about Netanyahu recently and said, no, he's got a very tough job. I don't have any problems with Bibi at all. There are internal reports out of Israel that Bibi is saying it's time to prepare to go it alone rather than having a dependent relationship upon the United States. We're seeing a generational changeover within evangelicalism, and you're seeing sort of the boomer preference towards dispensationalism is kind of being replaced by a younger generation that has some of the views that Reformed Christians or Catholics have traditionally had about the nation of Israel and whether it still has a prophetic place in God's plan from a Christian perspective or not. So all these things are getting stirred into this cauldron right now. So with that said, where do you think things really are? What's true and what's not?
So I want to introduce something else to your audience. You've heard me talk about it. I've been talking about it a lot recently. I don't want to focus solely on Israel, because let's say Israel died tomorrow. Here's a fact. I don't know what, to your point, exactly where Trump's going to land. My best assessment is the mixed posturing is a reflection of a split within the administration. You have Hegseth and Rubio that were more traditionally pro-Israel. You have some of the people like Witkoff and some of the people from the Quincy Institute that Tucker, some of which Tucker got into the administration, that feel differently. Some are leaking about the others. There was a leak to the Washington Post today attacking Michael Anton, who was he was the Flight 93 guy, because they don't like that he's too pro-Israel. So I think time will tell. But Steve, here's what we do know is going on. We do know Qatar Akbar, okay? We know Pam Bondi Qatar. Susie Wiles was a lobbyist for Qatar. Kash Patel, a lobbyist for Qatar. We know that Qatar in 2021, so this is a while ago, spent 3 times as much on lobbying as Israel did. They spent 2/3 of China's sum total on influencing when they're a country of 300,000, not 1.3 billion. We know Europe recently had a big scandal, a bunch of people arrested for taking bribes from Qatar. The plane business was just the tip of the iceberg. We're suddenly seeing policies aligning with Qatar. A couple months ago, a lot of these right-leaning influencers you mentioned that are turning on Israel blamed Israel for the fall of Assad. They're like, you got in Al-Qaeda, and they're slaughtering Christians, this Jelani guy. And then now suddenly Trump takes off the sanctions, is like, that's based. And remember, this was a 12-year investment by Qatar and Turkey. Saudi Arabia to an extent as well. So you have a lot of different data points. You have Lindsey Graham, who is in his own way very pro-Israel. But right after October 7th, he went over to Qatar and praised them and didn't say a word of the fact that they funded the operation and all of their leaders were sitting there to that day. You have the queen, like the queen mum of Qatar, who is regarded pretty much as Sheikha Moza bin Nasser. She's the most powerful woman in the Middle East. She's the mother of the current prime minister of Qatar, the wife of the previous one. She runs the Qatar Foundation, which helps fund the American universities, the public relations, all the subversion operations. She said that Sinwar, the Hamas leader, when he was killed, she said that he will live on and the enemy will be gone. I say all this, Steve, because there is this unmistakable twist with conservative media now being overrun by the Muslim Brotherhood more than the left. The Washington Examiner just came out with an article today, and I'll wrap this up, but just came out with an article today that before the election, just over 10% of communications sent by Qatari foreign agents to media, 10% of that pie was to conservative media commentators. Since the election, it's well over half. Where is this headed? Well, we don't know for sure, but where it's coming from is disturbing. So getting back to your thesis, I agree that there's a little bit of a natural trend of certain voices rejecting Israel, maybe blaming them for certain foreign policies, whether they're right about it or not. But what I do believe is not being examined enough is I think there's a huge exacerbation of this that's very much not natural. That's the tail wagging the dog. And I think if you look very carefully, you'll find certain people that never talked about Qatar, didn't know what it was, couldn't pronounce it, probably still don't know much about the dynamic there, but they love themselves some Qatar. And this is emblematic of the time we live in, where we can't even have philosophical, intellectual, theological debates, because we don't even know if the people purveying this crap even believe in it themselves, or they're getting paid off.
So let's talk about Qatar for a second, because I'm old enough to remember when it was Qatar, and they were our ally in the first Persian Gulf War. Okay. And then, they weren't our allies. Now they were seen as an element or essentially a top funder of Al Jazeera, as I recall, and a propaganda peddler. When the president gave his great speech in Riyadh of 2017, his poor Secretary of State choice at the time, Rex Tillerson, essentially was considered to be very closely aligned with now Qatar, and essentially tried to overrule the president on his own foreign policy. Okay. And then eventually, Trump fired him, which he should have done maybe 3 seconds after hiring that guy. Okay. So Qatar has been both a co-belligerent and a pest over the course of my lifetime and knowledge of politics. Is it possible? You may not be old enough to remember this, but the House of Saud in the Reagan era basically just decided that it was very clear they were not going to completely break the American alliance with Israel completely. So, and they didn't like an aggressive Iran for different reasons, much more than the Americans did. So they basically just decided if you can't beat them, join them. And we developed a strategic partnership with them, started sending them F-16s. Right, that's how that relationship began. Is it possible that after attempting to use Rex Tillerson to undermine the president in his first term, and that didn't work out, seeing that it was very clear with the Abraham Accords and things of that nature that seeing Jordan and Saudi Arabia assist Israel in going back at Iran last year when one of their attacks against and letting the Jordanians letting the Israelis use their airspace, for example. Is it possible that the Qataris have just realized, like the House of Saud did in the 80s with Reagan, it is what it is. Let's cut a deal. The guy's a deal maker. Let's get our cut. Let's make sure we have a seat to sit down here in the new world that Trump is reshaping before the music stops. And we're all just, going to be one big happy family of people mutually aligned economically. And there's not necessarily anything more sinister than they just realized they weren't going to break the will here. And so let me just cut a deal with Trump and make sure that we don't get a Moab dropped on us next. Is it possible it's just craven instinct and not necessarily something, uniquely sinister?
Well, it's prima facie that they see the opportunity to cut a deal that they're doing, but the corollary would be that they're going to sort of give up their jihad. Mm-hmm. And that I see no evidence. I actually see it very similar to Clinton with China in the 90s. I see Qatar as China 2.0 with the subversion, that there was this thought we invite them in, invest in our critical infrastructure, invest in our universities, and, we'll bring them out of the shadows, and everyone loves free sex, trade, and drugs. Mm-hmm. So, we'll get on with it. But obviously it didn't work out that way. And that was without jihad. It's whatever the Chi-Com ideology is. Again, what the most powerful person in Qatar just said was very recently about jihad. There's really no evidence of that. And certainly I'm not seeing us get concessions from them.
Mm-hmm.
I see a direct correlation with an ROI on their investment. Now, you are right that the reason why they ramped up their investment in subversion.
Let's say charm offensive. Like, how about we use that term? Yeah,
is because they were on the bad side of things. Mm-hmm. In Trump's first term, because so people know it's Sunni, but the Muslim Brotherhood is very unique. They fund all of the Sunni terrorists and then subvert the West, but they actually also play interference for Iran too, where some of the other Sunnis are mortal enemies of Iran. So that ticked off Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and UAE. So you had a split there. Now there's a more of a trend of them uniting and isolating Israel. Again, we'll see how that plays out. So I'm seeing Qatar get everything they want. I'm not seeing what we get. And in fact, what I am seeing is a permanent influencer network that's going to outlive Trump himself, that we should all be concerned. Look, I don't believe in foreign lobbying. I think that all needs to go away. I don't care if it's an ally or enemy, but it's got to bother us, Steve, that a jihadist country like that has that much influence on the right. That is very concerning. Again,
if you're saying if we're going to say AIPAC should not be permitted to take out Thomas Massie in a primary,
exactly,
then the Qataris should not be permitted to play play in our pond similarly at the exact same time. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, they've invested a lot in South Carolina, which is why they have Lindsey Graham and Governor McMaster in their back pocket. The same rationale we have for sort of divesting from China should apply to them by a million. Let's say Israel never existed. Everyone's complaining about the mosques being built. Steve, who's funding that? Mm-hmm. Did you know that Qatar dumped a bunch of money into the New York Department of Education? So not just universities, but K through 12 to fund Arabic textbooks. Again, this is a very big problem. So there's something a little bit incongruent with people making it about Israel. But what they're promoting is not isolationist, Steve. It's not even handedness. It's straight up Wilsonian engagement just on the other side. You know what it's kind of similar to? I know it sounds nuanced, but Obama and Biden, which is why they're actually leaking to the same people like Josh Rogan at the Washington Post, who played interference on these very issues just a year ago for Biden. So again, this is about a lot more than Israel or even Trump. It's about China 2.0, albeit with a jihadist twist and an inordinate influence on the right.
Well, we didn't have a nation called Israel from 110 AD till 1948. All right. Islam came about in the 7th century. Yep. So between the 7th century and 1948, it wasn't like Islam just looked at Christendom and said, you guys are adorable, do your own thing. All right. So this idea that the nation of Israel is what caused its reiteration is what caused Islam to come after. It's just not historically accurate. I mean, Islam came after Christendom literally within minutes of the second generation of its leaders taking the place of Muhammad. So
do you want the Muslim Brotherhood building mosques in America's heartland? To me, that's the bigger issue.
I think that's a good question to ask. All right. And that's how you find out if they just decided to cut a deal or they're trying to worm their way in. Those are two totally different things.
Yep.
Great stuff, my friend. Thank you. Appreciate it.
See you later.
You bet. Daniel, brought to you by our friends over at Patriot Mobile. They've been on the cutting edge of the parallel economy, which now is fully available and has been for years with at least one product that we all need, and that is our mobile phones because of Patriot Mobile. They're the leaders in this space with the parallel economy and mobile phones. You get the same coverage that the communist countries who hate you provide, but without giving them your money directly. And you get even a U.S.-based customer service team that you can understand. All right. And if you go to make the switch Okay. If you think I can't make the switch, I'm locked into a contract. They've got a contract buyout program up to $500 per device to get you to move over. All right. And you can get a free month of service to get you started when you go to patriotmobile.com/Steve. That's patriotmobile.com/Steve. Use the promo code Steve to get started with that free month of service at patriotmobile.com/Steve. That's patriotmobile.com/Steve. Keep your phone, upgrade your phone, keep your number, switch your number, whatever you want to do. They'll customize it for you at patriotmobile.com/Steve. We got about a minute left. Any quick comments on the conversation Daniel and I just had?
Yeah, Qatar money buying off so-called conservatives across the fruited plain is the most believable thing Daniel has ever said. Honestly, it's the same thing. They go, look at Texas mosques, like cities surrounding mosques. But that's the heart of football. The same logic applies. There's just too much money. Roll Tide. I mean, Daniel, you nailed it. Utterly believable.
Aaron? Just my gut speaking here, because that's what everybody tunes into here. I'm far more willing, and I'm not sure how willing I am, I'm far more willing to see how some sort of a business economic partnership with Saudi Arabia goes than I am with Qatar, because I'm very skeptical about their motivations, and that's putting it lightly. We'll let it play out. We should be able to see what their actual true motivations and goals and end games are, but I'm very skeptical about any relationship with them.
Romans 8:28.